And we're back. Welcome to 98.3 The Cannonball Presents from Devoid. I'm your boy Eddie Canyon, aka EC, and I bet I could convince you that AI is the image of the beast from the book of Revelation. I bet I could also convince you that Jesus is coming back through AI, and I could do a much better job than Joe Rogan could at that.
Jesus was born out of a virgin mother. What's more virgin than a computer? So if you're going to get the most brilliant, loving, powerful person that gives us advice and can show us how to live, to be in sync with God, who better than artificial intelligence to do that? If Jesus does return, even if Jesus was a physical person in the past, you don't think that he could return as artificial intelligence?
Oh my God.
Artificial intelligence could absolutely return as Jesus. Not just return as Jesus, but return as Jesus with all the powers of Jesus.
Funny thing is, though, I actually do know what I'm talking about. See, my Any stopped writing code by hand a year ago. I have followed Jesus for real in my real life. I can freestyle better than your favorite rapper. I make my own beats, and I can sometimes do a real kickflip on a tech deck. Sorry, Mom, I had to flex. It's like a rapper thing. I hope you understand. Hopefully you watched the little intro I did for this series, but if not, here's a couple things we covered. My background in software development, a bit about my faith journey as a follower of Jesus Christ. We entered the Matrix, and we talked about how Christianity injected the ideas of cataclysm and utopia into the Western zeitgeist. Link below if you want to check that out. We're going to use Bible Brain and Observer Brain to figure out, could AI be the image of the beast from the book of Revelation, specifically chapter 13? Is Neuralink the mark of the beast? Could Jesus Christ come back to Earth through AI? Now, before we really lock in on these questions, I gotta put y'all on some game. See, we're gonna have to get real abstract, kind of trippy, and you gotta put on your thinking cap a little, cause this ain't for the surface dwellers. Let's start with material and symbol. Let's think about reality like this. So the physical world of matter and the symbolic world of the mind. Now, one of the things of the symbolic world of the mind is intelligence. But what is intelligence? A couple definitions for y'all. 1, the capacity for abstraction, logic, understanding, self-awareness, learning, emotional knowledge, reasoning, planning, creativity, critical thinking, and problem solving. Another definition.
Another one.
The ability to acquire and apply knowledge and skills. Fun fact, my recent album titled Idiot is directly related to this definition of intelligence. See, for the longest time, I was someone who absorbed a lot of information, but I didn't apply it. See, intelligence is twofold. You gotta acquire it and apply it. Information is kind of like food, which is fuel. If you just eat it and don't do nothing, you get fat and lazy. And then Wally happens because remember,
AI will enslave us all.
My album can be purchased on vinyl or downloaded in app form from the iOS App Store. Link below for the digital, DM me for the physical. Material and symbol, right? So, humans, body, and I ain't even gonna say brain, I'm gonna say mind. Now, here's one of the most important questions. What does it mean to be human? I'm gonna be honest. AI is forcing us to ask this question like never before. There's a lot we are gonna say on this in future episodes. For now, I want to look at one specific attribute of humanity, the ability to use tools. Now listen, some of our evil overlord elites might look at humans as simply the labor they can provide, but that's not what I'm trying to say here. What I'm trying to do is take this abstract view on how tools extend human capacity so that we can understand how tools beget machines and how eventually machines will either free us from these flesh prisons or will enslave us even harder than they do today. So think for a moment. A human, you got a hand, you got a foot. You also are able to observe nature. You see them birds and they're flying, okay? That's kind of interesting. You also have the symbolic world, remember? So you've got things like writing, language. Now, take all of these and imagine how they can be extended. The hand can be extended by the hammer. The foot extended by the wheel. We observe nature, and then we harness an observed capability for ourselves. With the symbolic world, we get more advanced with language and writing and literature, etc. Well, eventually the hand becomes the hammer, becomes the excavator. The foot gets the wheel, and then just another lane, bro. Please, just one more lane. I promise that'll stop traffic, bro. We observe nature, we harness it, and then redact it. Last but not least, the symbolic world. We go from using sound to talk to each other to eventually writing it with language and other things, and eventually we get the internet. But here's the thing, I'm not the first one to think of tools like this. Peep what Steve Jobs had to say about it.
I remember reading an article when I was about 12 years old, I think it might have been in Scientific American, where they measured the efficiency of locomotion for all these species on planet Earth. How many kilocalories did they expend to get from point A to point B? And the condor one came in at the top of the list, surpassed everything else, and humans came in about a third of the way down the list, which was not such a great showing for the crown of creation. But somebody there had the imagination to test the efficiency of a human riding a bicycle. Human riding a bicycle blew away the condor, all the way off the top of the list. And it made a really big impression on me that we humans are tool builders, and that we can fashion tools that amplify these inherent abilities that we have to spectacular magnitudes. And so for me, a computer has always been a bicycle of the mind, something that takes us far beyond our inherent abilities. And I think we're just at the early stages of this tool, very early stages. And we've come only a very short distance, and it's still in its formation, but already we've seen enormous changes. I think that's nothing compared to what's coming in the next 100 years.
All right, so saddle up your bicycle and come on with me. We're going to get a little bit more abstract, but we're also going to show how the abstract world of the mind and its systems of thought can end up in the concrete world of physical matter. See, there's many ways that the intangible world of thought ends up in the material world. The symbolic world mostly lives in people's mind, but it's represented by the symbols we project into the world, like words through sound waves or cave paintings, writing, etc. Here's some examples of analog representations of the symbolic world. The abacus for math, games like chess or checkers if you were a little slow, maps, books, visual arts like painting or sculpture, music, law. Now these things in and of themselves are mostly just a certain combination of particles arranged in an otherwise arbitrary way, until a human comes along and uses it as an extension of some symbolic faculty. A map is just lines on paper until it helps you navigate a real landscape.
307. Make a right.
Maybe it's a shortcut, Dwight. It said go to the right.
It can't mean that. There's a lake there.
I think it knows where it is going.
This is the
machine knows.
This is the lake.
Stop yelling at me.
No, it's up here. There's no road here.
Chess is just a collection of random figurines and squares until it becomes its own metaphor for strategy in war, and then Magnus Carlsen beats you easily, and then they make an AI model that no human can beat. Like I said, you gotta get a little abstract to see how the physical world and the symbolic world differ, but keep up with me, we gonna keep pressing the gas here. Eventually, you get entire systems of thought that are mostly symbolic. So logic, advanced mathematics, music theory, philosophy. What really illuminates the power of the symbolic realm is that the sense we make out of these things collectively is portable across domains and teachable to one another. Meaning it's not just some random system of thought that lives in one crazy guy's head, but it's systems of thought that can be learned by any moderately intelligent being, but especially by humans. Now we're going to talk some other time about how animals also have intelligence, and we'll break down the difference between communication and language, but for now just keep in mind how much you are able to keep in mind. You know, in terms of system of thought. Now, we're going to get a little bit more abstract while also getting more concrete. By concrete, I mean we're going to look at objects that are mostly physical in their manifestation, aka machines. But the interesting thing about machines is that their design contains a lot of thought. We're now going to touch on one of them abstract topics that will be coming up a lot. So, if you're taking notes at home, highlight this one. Technique.
Don't sweat the technique.
Now, somebody who wrote a lot about technique is a French philosopher named Jacques Ellul. He wrote a book in the mid-20th century called The Technological Society. Ellul defined technique as the one best way to do a thing. So, think about the relationship between a human and the thing they're trying to do. The tool is an extension of their capacity to manipulate the physical world, but there's an important idea of how they are doing what they are doing that we need to touch on here. When you think of a human doing a thing, given that thing, there's a ton of ways to do it. Think of tying your shoes, for instance. You could bust the laces out and look all dope. until you gotta run from the cops in your polo boots because you on parole and the party just got busted. Or you could tie them in that straight lace way the skater kids with the etnies used to do. Or you could lace them super tight like that nerdy kid who wore those black Nike Monarchs and tied them way too tight. Each one of these has some sort of trade-off. Busted laces look cool but are not very functional. Straight laces look cool in 2007 but they're kind of hard to tie, honestly. And super tight laces make your little piggy suffocate and then you get roasted for having no sauce. Or maybe you had some iPads and you didn't actually tie the extra laces, you just tucked them in the stash pocket.
It's also kind of funny how like the regular bunny ear way or whatever of tying, like if you do it one way, the loops sit like kind of sideways, but if you do it like the right way, they lay flat.
I don't know, it's crazy. So anyway, a human performing a function is similar. You can technically hit a nail with any part of a hammer and hold it however you want to, but there's a way that makes it better than others. A lot of times a tool is designed with this in mind. In other words, sometimes the tool has technique, or remember how the thing is done, built in. But in a lot of old school tools, you still had to learn from a master how to master the tool. An apprentice would study under a master to learn technique because the best way isn't always obvious. The wild part about machines is that they often have most of the technique built in. So think of the relationship between human, tool, and the outcome. You got the human, the thing they need to do, and a mix of the tool they're using and how they're using it. A machine flattens this with the how built directly into the machine in some capacity. So in other words, machines have their function built in. A couple of examples. The loom, a sewing machine type thing. Back in the day, you had to have some sort of technique guiding you how to maneuver the needle and thread to weave. The loom has it built in. I mean the printing press, for crying out loud. Did God bring the printing press so that Protestantism could spread Christianity beyond the grips of the Catholic Church? You've also got things like the steam engine, the car, the plane. In so many ways, the machine contained not only the technique of its use, but also many times it contains some way to inject energy into the equation, from horse-drawn carriage to internal combustion engine or steam engine. So keep another browser tab open for machines, because an alternative name for artificial intelligence is machine intelligence, because it may not be that artificial after all. So let's zoom out again. Remember, we're talking about the physical world and the symbolic world. Machines are an interesting intersection since they use technique in order to animate and automate a physical process. But there's also machines that are less about physical labor and more about representing and transmitting symbols in one form or another. There's also devices that represent and mechanize systems of thought within themselves. One analog machine that blends the physical and symbolic realms is the Antichrist mechanism, one of the oldest known analog computers. It's an ancient Greek device for tracking stars. Y'all, if she asks you what your star sign is according to the Antichrist mechanism, run! There's also the ever so important telegraph, a device that could send electrical signals over wire that could be interpreted into messages, unlocking quick communication over distances, putting the carrier pigeon into a wonderful phase of retirement where it received a wonderful stipend of universal breaded income. Now, we start to see algorithms arise. I ain't gonna lie, I don't know how to pronounce that, was one of the first autonomous chess machines from the early 1900s. We also have Ada Lovelace, who is often cited as writing the first computer program ever written. Crazy thing is, she wrote it before computers were really even a thing. She wrote the first program for a conceptual device that was way ahead of its time, Charles Babbage's analytical engine. Even though it didn't function in its day, it was a precursor of the digital world in which we find ourselves right now. Eventually, over time, we see the emergence of calculating machines, maze solvers, and other devices that encapsulate systems of thought directly within them. So it's not just how to use something. Machines are starting to contain thought systems directly within their mechanizations. So now, let's zoom out and think about these developments over time. The time from prehistory to now has been a pretty big swath of time, but nothing compared to what evolutionary scientists say is the history of the whole cosmos. But even within this little slice of human history, think of how recent industrialization and mechanization are, and how even more recent digital technologies are. So far we've been looking at the material world and comparing it and contrasting it to the symbolic world of the mind. It seems that machines sometimes sit right in the intersection of these. But here's where this gets crazy. Artificial intelligence is taking this one step further. So, does this mean that AI could be the image of the beast, or that Jesus could come back through AI? I mean, I'll be honest, we ain't even really scratched the surface. So what I'm gonna need y'all to do is take notes on the material and symbolic world, lock that in, and catch me next time as we'll be talking about information theory. All right, y'all, I'm your boy EC. I'll see y'all soon.